Hi, my name is Wayne Stocks. My wife Tricia and I are the proud parents of one, soon to be two, Northridge graduates, and we also have two more children still in the school system. This is my Why Northridge, Why Now video. Let me explain in case you're not familiar. In the Northridge District, we've been trying for the last several years, in fact this is the 6th time this issue has been on the ballot, to pass a levy to build a new elementary school, to combine the kids who are in the current primary school that was built in 1923 with the children from 4th and 5th grade who've been learning out of temporary pods outside the middle school for the last 10 years into one new school in a centralized location that will be up near the middle school and the high school. Like I say, this is the 6th time and hopefully the final time this issue will be on the ballot. And I just wanted to take a few minutes to explain to you why I will be going out on May 7th to vote yes for our kids and yes for Northridge. It all boils down to one thing. This levy just makes sense. And so if you're going to vote yes for this levy, if your plan is to vote yes next Tuesday, thank you. I appreciate it. Our kids appreciate it. The community appreciates it. Feel free to watch this video, share it if you want, but this video isn't really meant for you. If you don't know how you're going to vote, if you're not planning to vote, or if you're going to vote no, I'm talking to you. I just wanted to share with you some of the reasons I plan to vote for this levy. Listen, I don't think you're evil. I don't think you hate kids. I've seen the rhetoric that has been going around from a very limited number of people, but I disagree with it. I know that we all have our own reasons for doing things, and I just wanted to share with you some of my thoughts that hopefully you'll take the time to consider and hopefully decide that you want to vote yes for the kids and yes for their futures. So, the fact of the matter is that this levy just makes sense. And I want to discuss at least 4 ways that it makes sense. And the first is that it just makes common sense. The school that these kids are learning in now was built in 1923. Excuse me. Means it's just 4 years shy of being 100 years old. A lot's changed in 100 years. I mean, lots changed in the 25 years since I was in high school. Actually, I guess it's been closer to 30, not to age myself, but lots changed in that time. If you look at what the world was like then and what it's like now, the idea that this school is sufficient for our kids to learn in, it just makes sense that they need a new school. In fact, I was doing some research yesterday on the internet and looking at older schools in Ohio, and there's a website that lists old schools throughout Ohio, and it lists their current status. And I will tell you that you are hard pressed to find any school built around that time that's still in existence as a public school, that's not been significantly refurbished for private use, or shut down or demolished entirely. The fact of the matter is that these buildings just deteriorate over time and you can only do so much. We can't hope for our kids to get a modern education in an antiquated facility. I know some people are of the opinion that the school was good enough for me. We didn't have X or Y or Z when I was in school. Why do these kids need it? And the fact of the matter is that these kids aren't growing up in the world that we grew up in. Our schools and our parents, they prepared us for the world that we live in now. But these kids need to be prepared for a world that we can't even imagine right now. Think about how things have changed over the last 10 years. Maybe you're watching this on an iPhone or some other sort of smartphone. Those didn't exist. The world that these kids are going to graduate into and live in is different than we can even imagine. And we need to do our best to prepare them for that. That is the primary school. I mentioned the temporary pods that are 4th and 5th graders. At least 3 of my kids have been in those temporary pods for 4th and 5th grade. They were built 10 years ago when 2 of the elementary schools in our district were essentially condemned by the state as not safe for kids. And I've got to say, at the time, I wondered how far behind the Alexandria school could possibly be, because it wasn't in good shape at the time, and it's deteriorated since. It's not a safe learning environment. The administrators and the teachers in our district have done the best that they can, but these kids need a new school. It just makes sense. Another reason this levy just makes common sense has to do with security issues. We just live in a different world. It's a scary world. All you have to do is turn on the news to see what's going on at schools, and you realize the need for security at every school in this country. The fact of the matter is these security updates shouldn't be needed. It is a shame that we live in a world where they are needed, but they are, and they're needed to keep our kids safe, and it's important that we fund those updates as well. So this levy just makes common sense. Secondly, I want to address the elephant in the room, and that is the idea that this levy makes good fiscal sense. I'm an accountant by trade. I've done that for 25 years. I understand the fiscal implications. I understand the issue of taxes. I don't like taxes. Nobody likes taxes. I've never met the person who says, "Ooh, I hope I can pay some more taxes." We have an issue, people have issues with this particular levy because it has both a property tax component and an income tax component. Frankly, I'm not a big fan of having both components, but I understand the reason for it. It's a compromise. It's a compromise between the farmers who own a lot of land and the wage earners who live in a house and pay some property tax, but then will contribute some more via the income tax. It's not the best system, but it's meant as a compromise, and instead what's happened is it's pitted two groups of people against each other, both wanting the other side to pay more than their fair share. And so it's time that we accepted the compromise and went out and voted for this levy in its current structure. Listen, there are better ways to fund schools. Ohio found the way that public schools are funded here in this state unconstitutional over 20 years ago. It's kind of ridiculous the way it's done, but it is the only system that we have. We can't keep punishing these kids because the grown-ups can't get it figured out. Some other reasons that this just makes fiscal sense. Like I said earlier, that school in Alexandria is almost 100 years old. Those pods need constant work. We're constantly paying for repairs and maintenance just to keep those things open and running when that money could be invested in infrastructure and building something for the future. Furthermore, the cost to build the new school, continues to increase the longer we put it off. We need to vote now, bite the bullet, get it done, get it built, and be proactive rather than reactive. Also experience cost savings through consolidation. I mentioned earlier that the plan is to build the new school up near the middle school and the high school. Having all the schools in one location will help to save costs. And also just generally having a modern building. You can imagine how expensive is it to run a building that's 100 years old versus a more modern building that can take advantage of all the new technology and things that have been discovered in the last 100 years. It's just cheaper to run. Excuse me. The fact of the matter is that here in the Northridge School District, we have the lowest taxes in Licking County, and even after this levy passes, we will continue to have the lowest taxes. One of my concerns is that if we don't get this issue figured out, again, if the grown-ups can't get it all figured out, I fear that the state could come in and blow up our district. Our kids and our properties could become part of surrounding districts like Johnstown, New Albany, and Granville, where our taxes would be much higher. So fiscally, it makes more sense to support this levy than the possibility of going through that. As accountants, when we spend money, we think of it in one of two ways. We have expenses and we have capital expenditures or investments. Expenses just go to maintain things. Repairs, maintenance, keeping things running. Those are necessary costs, but they don't build towards anything. And then we have investment. Investment is when we put money into something that continues to pay a return. Investment in the building. Investment in the future. Investment in the future of these kids. Investments in the future of the community. We are lucky enough to have school teachers and administrators who care so much about our kids. And despite everything they've been through, all of the hardships, it was deemed the second highest rated school district in Licking County recently by the state. Imagine what the kids could do with more investment. There's really no way to measure those returns. So number one, the levy makes common sense. Number two, it just makes fiscal sense. The third way this just makes sense is that it makes sense for the community. The school system is a key component in building a strong community. And the fact of the matter is communities either grow or they tend to stagnate and die. We need good schools in order to attract good people to our communities and to build a strong community. We also need to provide for these kids and plan for the future. Things are growing around us, whether we like it or not, and we need to plan for that. The more kids we try and shove into antiquated facilities, the less safe they are and the harder it is for those kids to learn. It's time that we started looking towards the future and planning for the future rather than reacting to things after they happen. And finally, these kids need a safety net. One of the things I do as an aside to my normal job is I work with kids who've been traumatized, who've experienced some sort of hardship in their life, abuse, suicide in the family, drugs, divorce, poverty, who've experienced some sort of trauma and the emotional impacts that has on kids. And what the studies show us is that one of the mitigating factors for kids who've experienced that type of thing is a caring adult in their lives. And in today's society, all too often, those kids don't have anybody else but their teachers, and the nurses, and the counselors, and the principals at schools. So I say thank God for the schools. Thank God that they're there for those kids, that those kids have somebody in the worst times of their lives. And often the only person that child has. And we need to have a school system that's going to continue to attract those types of people who can serve as a safety net for these kids. Listen, I have more respect than I can ever express to you for the teachers, many of whom have become friends over the course of the last 15 years, for the administrators in our district. They care so much about our kids. I see principals and vice principals and school board members and the superintendent, and I see them coming out to my kids' sporting events on a Saturday night and at the football game on Friday night, just loving on these kids, knowing these kids by name. It's one of the beauties of a smaller school district like we have. These teachers and these administrators love these kids, care for these kids, and they're there for these kids. And it's time that we supported not only the kids, but that we supported those teachers and administrators who care for them. So it makes common sense, it makes fiscal sense, it makes sense for the community, but most importantly, I'm going out on May 7th to vote yes for Northridge because it's the right thing to do. Listen, if you have kids, grandkids, nieces, nephews, you care for a child, it's important that you invest in their future, invest in the future of their friends. If you don't have kids, and I hear a lot, I'm not voting for this levy because I don't have kids, how about we invest in the future of the kids in our community, and invest in the future of our society, frankly. It doesn't matter what school was like when you went. It doesn't matter if you don't like the plan or if you think there's a better way or where you think the school should be in a different location that's planned. It matters that we invest in these kids. I hear a lot of complaining about these kids today. They're lazy, they don't care, they're impolite, whatever it may be. And I've got to say, the way these kids turn out is the result of the opportunities that we provide to them and what we invest into them. And if we want better results, we have to be willing to invest in them. We have to be willing to invest time. We have to be willing to invest resources, even when it hurts, even when, frankly, we'd rather not. We can't continue to tell these kids that we care about them and then not invest in their future. So on May 7th, I'm encouraging you to go out and vote. Vote yes for Northridge. Yes for our schools, yes for our kids, yes for our community, yes for our future. It makes sense, and it's the right thing to do. Thanks very much for listening.